regarded as one of the best in his field, graphic novelist Chris Ware, author of Jimmy Corrigan, The Smartest Kid on Earth, and Building Stories, is usually loath to give interviews. A bit of an insular recluse, I was surprised when Chris accepted my invitation for an interview and invited me into his home studio. Warm and insightful, despite not necessarily being a people person, my interview with Chris Ware is one of the most important I've ever done. My name is Elysabeth Alfano, host of the TV show, web series, and podcast, The Celebrity Dinner Party. After a quick word about podcasts and a word from my sponsor, Adora Therapy, I'll be right back with graphic novelist Chris Ware. Life is challenging, and everyone needs a tool they can use to shift their mood in the moment. Adora Therapy is an aromatherapy company that makes mood boost personal sprays and room scents for every occasion. Blends like lavender chamomile, cinnamon clove, and blood orange bergamot are only some of the fragrances from Adora Therapy's unique line of specialty scents, carefully mixed to trigger chakra points and to help you boost your mood. Plus, Adora Therapy sprays and roll-ons are pre-blended, vegan, cruelty-free, and ready to go. The perfect size to fit in your purse and take with you to boost your mood anytime, anywhere. So treat yourself to a mood boost and share the gift of stunningly packaged mood boosts with others. Visit adoratherapy.com and don't forget to like us on Facebook. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, The Celebrity Dinner Party, with me, Elysabeth Alfano, on iTunes. Just search for The Celebrity Dinner Party. Or, if SoundCloud is your thing, you can find me there too by searching for The Celebrity Dinner Party. Subscribe and you'll never have to hunt for engaging and inspiring interviews again. They'll just land on your computer or your iPhone every time a new podcast comes out. So subscribe now to The Celebrity Dinner Party with me, Elysabeth Alfano, because the best conversations really do happen over dinner. Chris, thank you for having me here in your home.
Sure.
I was recently reading one of your Acme Novelty Library series, and there was a strip that said, ruin your life, draw cartoons, and doom yourself.
Right.
And I wondered if you could comment on how much work you create and what compels you.
Geez, that's a big question. Well, I did the strip a couple of years after I finished a book called Jimmy Corrigan, which took me 7 years to do. And I was surprised when I finished it that the world had changed so much from the time that I'd started it. Which of course it would. The world changes, but clearly I had somehow frozen it in my brain and expected everything to stay exactly the same that it was when I'd started it. So, and I found that in talking to my cartoonist, not all my cartoonist friends, but some of them had similar experiences. So, and I kind of felt that the literature available at the time to young cartoonists telling them how to draw comics was wanting severely for warnings of this kind and the sort of psychosis you can easily slip into as a cartoonist. So
like losing 7 years.
Yeah, and I don't know. I just tried to do something that was as honest as could be about the possible psychological pitfalls of falling down that kind of hole for that long. So, but
you mentioned psychological pitfalls. So many of your characters have some of your own traits, like Rusty Brown is a collector, and as we can see around us, you are clearly a collector.
Right.
And Jimmy Corrigan, Smartest Kid on Earth, he has these feelings that maybe his father won't like him when he finally gets a chance to meet him.
Right.
And I wondered what it's like for you to work through your own feelings on the page.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think I could do anything else. That's why I do what I do, I suppose. I don't know if I could actually typify what it's like, other than it's I'm sort of at a flat line of self-doubt. Sometimes it goes down a little bit, sometimes it goes up much higher than that, but I'm always very dubious of both my aims and my abilities. So maybe that comes out in the work, I don't know, or in the comics. I hate the word work. When you talk about what you do, it sounds so pretentious, but...
Well, it's incredible to me how you undermine, in a way, yourself and your accomplishments because you have so many.
Well, I don't know. I mean, when I look back at what I've done, all I can see are mistakes or the terrible drawing, or like, oh, geez, this character's eye is 4 inches off to the side, and I just think it looked fine to me when I drew it, but now I can look back and think, oh, this is horrible, or I'll just see right through the lies or the terrible writing, and I try to be as honest and distant from myself as I can while I'm writing, to try to see things as accurately as I can, but it hardly ever works. So. And
does the self-doubt propel you?
I don't know what propels me. Maybe it's just an attempt to try to see it as accurately as I can, which is hopeless. But yeah, I don't know.
It's interesting that you've chosen or have a willingness to be so public about this.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous kind of contradiction that I think a lot of cartoonists have, which is to hide at a table and draw things, and then and then we're a weird combination of arrogance and self-doubt. I think Charles Schulz was a good example of this. Even in interviews that he gave, he would vacillate wildly back and forth between utter not necessarily self-hatred, but really uncertainty, and then say, but what other cartoonist is read by 10 million people? Has anyone else ever done that? So and I can find myself falling into that. It's just, it's crazy, basically, sitting at a table and drawing these pictures and looking into this world for a long period of time. So I have this theory that all cartoonists eventually go nuts at one point or another. So
I can see where this
check them off, but
it's not actually too far-fetched, because the hours and toiling and re-looking and staring and tunneling in, I would think, and particularly about things that you maybe dislike about yourself, and yet you're tunneling in on them all day long, that would send anyone over the edge.
Tunneling is a very good verb. That's good. I never thought of that. Can I use that?
You can
I'll
use
give you
it.
credit. That's kind of what it feels like.
I would like
actually.
credit for tunneling.
Yeah.
Of course, please use that.
I think writers, they do the same thing, but I don't think it takes as long, and there's something about looking at words on a page that is different than looking at pictures that you've drawn. When you're looking at things that you've drawn, the feedback loop becomes that much more intense and sort of loud, I guess.
And human. Because you've got characters, and so it becomes more real than words on a page.
Yeah, maybe. There's no flow to it, though. It's very kind of a brittle, clattery, awkward kind of a medium. Well, at least the way I do it. There are other cartoonists who are more fluid and are able to have more of a flow to what they do. But I think writing, you can get into sort of a buoyant flow where you almost kind of create the river as you're rowing in it, but there's nothing like that in cartooning. It's like trying to live in a house while you're building it or something. It's not a very comfortable proposition. So
what comes first? The words? Well, I guess first you have a character sketch, and then words to that, and then the drawing?
I don't really do character sketches, which I guess is one of my many flaws as a writer-cartoonist, but it's the words and images simultaneously. Usually they're false memories that start to occur to me during the day when I'm just going about my daily activities. I'll start thinking about people that don't exist. And that's, I just start with a blank page and start working after I've been thinking about things for a number of months or years. So.
And you just go straight?
Pretty much. I'll make notes or I'll do little sketches sometimes. That frequently means that stuff will not actually appear. It's, but I don't write out I go through many drafts of a script or anything like that, because I found in the past that whenever I did that, what I would produce would be very cold and stilted and false. So.
Well, it's interesting that you mention cold, because your work has an incredible economical sense to it. In a very short time and with very few words, you're able to sort of bring the reader in, again, tunneling into very despondent emotional states of your characters without very much words, really.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's nice. I mean, what I'm hoping to do is just to make it as clear as possible what's going on the page, and to make the images really not necessarily that interesting, but just easily readable, so that then the story can be as confusing and difficult to sort out as my own experiences are. As if I had the images and the drawings be as difficult to sort out as the story, then it would be difficult to read.
To read the story.
I mean, that's the way I experience the world. I see things pretty clearly. I have no doubt that there is a chair there and that it seems to have an edge. You know, I'm not like fumbling around in a psychedelic state or anything like that. But when it comes to remembering things, or remembering my impulses, or my what I think of as my reasons for doing things, that's when things start to get really confused. So.
So you try to keep it simple for the reader as well.
Well, just simple for the yes, right, yeah.
Could you talk to me about how important the layout and coloring is? Because again, you seem to reach emotional states in your drawing for these characters that touch a lot of people. And I'm wondering how much the layout and color plays to this.
Yeah, I would say it's very important. I mean, it's probably one of the most important things. It's certainly one of the distinct advantages of drawing comics and publishing them as books, because you're working in discrete units of pages, which are sort of analogous to the way that we divide and break up our own memories, and where we choose to start and stop them. And I try to align those pages in certain ways, or to echo compositions or echo placement of objects through books, so that they can have hopefully some sort of resonance. As for the color, I try to use color somewhat naturalistically, but I also use it in a way to connect themes or objects or people on the page in sort of a it's basically my last chance. Like, if the page isn't working, hopefully I can fix it with the color. So.
And what are you hoping that the reader feels in your comics?
I don't know. I mean, I just hope that they feel something. I don't know what that feeling would be. I mean, if one reader could have could laugh at a page, another might feel sad. I hopefully don't want to make an emotion that's so specific, because comics were about the only medium that a reader could expect to go to get a very particular emotional reaction for decades. And was one of my aims as a young cartoonist, to try to bring other emotions to comics other than just, laughing or derision.
Humor.
So.
And you certainly do this. You're probably going to cringe when I say this, but I see you very much as almost having cult figure-like status.
I
Okay.
don't
Right. Okay, well.
I was supposed to live in a trailer home and have like 7 wives to have cult status or something like that. I'm just like a boring middle-class Midwesterner or something.
Yes, but you have affected so many people, and so many people follow your work. And the reason I guess that this is most of your characters have emotional deficiencies and are still hung up on childlike insecurities. Yeah. And as adults, we all expect ourselves to get over this, and none of us do. And you address this really readily in your comics, and so I feel that you strike a common chord with the average reader, that they connect to this childlike insecurity that they still have.
Oh, that's nice.
And I wondered if you have any hope of how you connect with your reader. Do you have any intention of how to connect with the reader?
Well, I hope on some emotional level. I can't say specifically what emotional level, but also maybe to draw out or sympathetically harmonize with certain experiences that they've had or possibly forgotten, that then I've remembered by drawing certain stories. I don't know. I mean, I one of the things I like about comics is that I know that whoever is going to read it, if anybody reads it, it'll just be one person. It's not going to be a lot of people at once, and that it's a very solitary, kind of private experience. So.
It's a very intimate experience.
Yeah,
Yes.
Right. So.
Well, I think the highest compliment anyone could ever get is to be loved by Linda Barry. So she has said wonderful things about your work, and I'm wondering, do you like your work?
No, not really. So, I go back and forth between kind of tolerating it and occasionally thinking, well, that didn't turn out so badly, to really just violently hating it and hating the way that everything that I've done, all of it as a as an arc or whatever, and the way that I draw, and yeah, there's multifarious ways that would just sound like whining if
I won't let you go on whining, so I'll ask another question, although it's similar. Do you value what you do?
Well.
Do you feel that your work has value? Your art has value?
You hope as an artist that it does, but I don't think that that's necessarily a judgment that one can make about oneself. I have noticed that some of the more successful artists tend to speak highly of themselves, so which I find very offensive, and I think humility is an important and sort of overlooked asset as a person, and I think it's important to kind of keep a sense of one's inherent valuelessness, because I think in a way that's sort of freeing, but I hope that maybe if I'm doing something that maybe it'll be interesting to somebody who hasn't been born yet, but that's not for me to judge, it's all just, easily thrown into a dumpster, come the right moment, so.
And if your work, it's so popular and has won so many awards, but if it were to be thrown into a dumpster, would you make it all the same?
Would I make?
Would you continue to make your work regardless of where it ended up?
I don't know. That's a hard question. I never expected in any way to be able to make a living doing this. I thought I would just be working at a frame shop or an art supply store or something and be the guy that the people point to. Like, oh, it's that weird cartoonist guy in the back there organizing the paper.
He's strange.
But yeah. So I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I'd just give up or something. But probably not. I'd probably still draw it. Maybe. I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's a thought experiment, I suppose. So it definitely changes one's approach when it becomes the means of sustenance for one's family. So.
Well, yes, it's the means of sustenance. You've been very successful at it. You've received quite a bit of praise, and not just in the literary world, but in the art world as well. Did you anticipate that these would be seen? No.
No, I didn't at all. So, I went to art school. I studied painting and sculpture and printmaking. And at the time that I was in school, it was difficult though I did find teachers who were willing to read my stuff. I found that most art teachers were not willing to read art. They wanted just to look at it. And I would hand them something and they would turn it upside down and say, this is a nice composition. And I'd say, well, yeah, but you're actually supposed to read it. The idea of reading images and reading artwork is kind of strange in a lot of ways for artists, I think. So it's really the one defining characteristic of cartooning and graphic novels is that it's visual art that is meant to be read and not looked at. So.
Right.
And there's a distinct division between the mental process of looking at something and reading it, which comes in when we start forming language and seeing the world and limiting the way we actually look at the world. So it's kind of a way of taking that adult process of limiting visual information and turning it back around and trying to get back then at that sense of childhood and actually seeing the world, but using that weird limiting template that we have always running in front of our eyes. So.
Yes, and I think this must be what allows people to sort of go back in time to those early emotional states that they've tried to bury, most likely.
Yeah.
But of course have never gone away.
Right, yeah, that's all there. So, but we're always rewriting it too, and we kind of have
in our mind.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think probably my memories of my childhood are completely wrong. Like I've talked to my mom about it and she said, no, that didn't happen at all. But then again, she'd misremembered things too, so we're all our own unreliable narrators, sadly. So.
Yes, and then we're all running around telling stories that may or may not.
Yeah,
right. So it's amazing that we continue on in this existence.
Yeah. Just trying to survive as a species, I guess, or something when we rape the planet of its resources. So.
Which brings me to my next question. So many of your characters feel hopeless. Feel certainly lonely. So many of them feel unconnected and unfulfilled and sad and depressed and despondent. And I wonder, is the world that bad?
Oh, no, I don't think so. There's just certain periods at which, I go back and forth. Between feeling that way and then feeling not that way, especially since my daughter was born. Yeah. It sort of answered all questions I had about life and all doubts I had. In a way, it's sort of the magic switch that needs to be flipped in a lot of us to just get out of yourself as the protagonist of the, you know, universe, basically. So,
yes, is the only thing that counts.
Right.
Yes.
So, yeah, but you know, it's, my wife and I both go back and forth between, you know, feeling despondent about things, etc. We'll even joke, you know, because when I'm feeling despondent, she feels great. She'll be like, "I'll get over it," and then a day later, she'll be like, "I feel terrible." And it's like, "Well, what's your problem? I'm busy, you know." So,
I'm busy.
Yeah.
I'm busy writing about how bad the world is.
Right. I don't know. I mean, I try to. I mean, one of the reasons I try to make the books look at least as nice as I can, or
Yes.
I try to do things that might possibly be considered in some places beautiful on the page, is to try to contradict what's going on within the characters' minds, and to say that, well, look, it's not so bad if you're looking at something that is, because I think when we remember things, we tend to remember them in a very organized, beautiful way in some ways, and that in the world itself actually is very beautiful, and experience can be beautiful. It's just a matter of seeing it that way. So I try to put those things together as working against each other. So when I compose the pages, I want them to be very beautiful and composed and considered to counteract what's going on in the character's mind. So
to show that there are good things happening in even perhaps bad situations. And then you also have, I'll say for lack of a better expression, comic relief going on in the book with, you know, 1920s ads of buy this soap and smell better. Right. So they're very dense books. Mm-hmm. Even on my Acme Novelty series, library series, there's a little comic on the binder. Mm-hmm. It's so tiny, no one could ever read it. Really? And so I wonder if you know, if you're writing things, even though you know no one will ever read them, but you just want to fill that space.
Partially, yeah. I mean, I hope somebody will read it, but yeah, I don't like wasted space. I don't want the reader to feel like they're being taken advantage of or ripped off, or.
Oh, I see.
So, and in that case, in that particular book, the whole book is kind of it's an attempt to kind of model it's very pretentious. I mean, the whole book is just a collection of jokes, so I figured I'd just go all out and put in the most pretentious, arrogant, ridiculous, philosophical, you know, frippery that I could think of. So, but
well, it is nonstop entertainment. I will say that.
That's nice of you. I don't know.
So back again to many of your characters feeling lonely, and then they go on to grow older, mm-hmm. and their state is even worse. They're lonelier, and they see themselves, you know, in a nursing home crying for the nurse, or but completely alone, and even befuddled by the fact that they're still alone and not completely processing their own loneliness. I wondered, do you think about your own death and how that might be?
Oh, yeah, sure. Like every 20 minutes or so. But okay. I don't know. Yeah, I don't, you know, I'm not trying to bum everybody out. That's not my aim. And the book I just finished it goes more towards an optimistic tone, but I don't think the character's view of herself changes that much, actually, from the time that she is living alone to the time that she's married. In fact, I think she's a more interesting person in some ways when she was in her own mind than when she's not. So I mean, I think, you know, I feel pretty happy about the way my life has turned out, but that doesn't mean anything to anybody else, you know. I think happiness is overrated, actually. I mean, it's a very private sort of emotion.
I'm not even sure it's a viable goal.
Yeah, it seems like a weird thing to write into a government document. Like the right to pursue happiness seems kind of a strange thing to. It's just like
the right to pursue, not actually having. They're different.
That's true.
Right?
Because you could use that as a really strange defense for all sorts of awful things. But,
true.
I think it's just important to be nice to people. I mean, that sounds so dumb, but it really is true in a lot of ways. I think that really, when a lot of literature just boils down to that, it just to remember to be kind and sympathetic and empathetic to other organisms, basically. So, but I don't know where else any sort of idea of civilization can head beyond that. So,
I would agree with that. Empathy being sort of the strongest quality anyone can have, and so many of your characters are just looking for the smallest glimpse of recognition, value. They're feeling so.
It sounds so grim.
Well, I think why
Sorry.
did your books touch me so much is I think most people really feel this way. Beyond the big smiles and the, oh, I just bought a new car, I think most people feel disconnected and undervalued. And it's a common chord. Everybody needs to feel valued. So I think everyone is seeking that out. And when they see other adult character figures having these almost childlike, really emotional states of nobody loves me, I think everyone connects to that.
Okay.
Even though they try to bury it.
Right.
Well, I'll go, one more question before I let you go, and thank you for your time today.
Oh, sure.
How long does it take you to finish a novel? Because they are so incredibly dense.
Yeah, the one I just finished, I started on in 2001, I think. But I've done a number of other books. I've been working on 2 simultaneously in my pathetic defense. And done a number of other projects. I think if I worked straight through, maybe I'd get it done in 4 or 5 years at maybe 300 pages or so. But generally, it takes generally about a week a page or so. So that gives you an idea of the
And how many hours a day?
Just like around 7 or 8. I used to work more before my daughter was born, but life is more fun than just sitting at a table.
Yes, it is. Life is more fun. Well, again, thank you for your time today. I
sure. Well,
appreciate
thank you. Very nice of you.
Thanks for joining in on The Celebrity Dinner Party with me, Elysabeth Alfano. To stay in the know, follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at DinnerPartyCHGO and on Facebook at Elysabeth Alfano and at The Dinner Party. To subscribe to this podcast, find The Celebrity Dinner Party on iTunes and on SoundCloud. And if you want to send me an email about today's podcast or anything else, you can find all my information at www.thedinnerparty.tv. The editor of The Celebrity Dinner Party is Andrew Jensen. The original music is by the Websters and Ship Captain Crew. Thanks for listening today, and join me on the next Celebrity Dinner Party podcast, where the best conversations happen over dinner.